Hello everybody and welcome back to the F2 show. I'm your host Fraser Ford, and joining me to review all of the action from this weekend, we have Inside F2 writers Luke John Buckle, Jenny Craig and Michael McClure. Coming up on the show then, we review all of the action and major talking points from this weekend in Hungary. A game-changing weekend in terms of the championship battle. We take a look at the implications. And we have some prizes on offer for you guys to win. Find out how you can win those later on in the show. Okay, Luke, great to have you with us. A really interesting weekend of action, actually, wasn't it? Did you enjoy the weekend?
Yeah, it was great. It's great to be back at Hungary after missing out in Hungary last year. I think Porsche did well earlier in the feature race. He had to win today to try and close down Djokovic's lead. And we saw Djokovic had a bit of a tardy day, didn't he? And 4 rounds to go. Spa up next. It was brilliant. Yeah, can't wait. First Spa.
Jenny, last weekend before the summer break. And it was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think both races, they were good strategy-wise. Not the best for action that we're used to in F2, but definitely intriguing.
Really was, and we're going to get stuck into that very shortly. Michael joining us from Budapest, and I think you've just run to where you are at the moment from the paddock, haven't you? How's it been out in Budapest, being in the paddock?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, some of you may know I'm half Hungarian, and so Budapest is the Hungaroring is kind of one of my home races. Really the closest thing you get to home race for me, nothing in the US. It was wonderful. Had 4 really great days there. Talked to a lot of people. You know, you see all these drivers racing on screen. You follow them up through their careers, and now you actually get to meet them, and it's kind of surreal. But it was truly fantastic. And I mean, I can tell you more about the train journey on the way back. But basically, I made it here with about like a minute to spare before the recording started. So quite the adventure. But that's what you get for being a paddock journalist. You just have to kind of take it as it comes, and have to rush around a lot. So.
That's the proper journalist life, isn't it? Catching your breath. But really glad to have you with us. Okay, let's take a look at the championship standings off the back of this weekend. Felipes Dragovic's lead has come down to 21 points at the top. Victory for Théo Closes means that he's now within a feature race victory of the Brazilian. Difficult weekend for Logan Sargent. He falls back from the top 2. Enzo Fittipaldi's best weekend in Formula 2 catapults him up the standings to P4 and into triple figures for this season as well. 100 points for him. Jehan Daruvula and Frederick Vesti round out the top 6. And the team standings, ART extend their lead at the top of the standings to 43 points after a mega points haul, particularly in the feature race. Carlin actually move ahead of MP Motorsport into P2 in the standings by just 1 point. High-Tech, Prema and Dams round out the top 6. And the full standings are available on our website, www.insidef2.com. Okay, massive weekend for the championship then. An 18-point swing in Théo Closes' favour. Feature race victory for him, Luke, and it's game on again, isn't it, in terms of the championship?
Yeah, he's within a victory of Djokovic. And I was just saying a minute ago, he had to win today because it was before the weekend. It was a big lead that Djokovic had, and it was inevitable, really, that Djokovic was going to have a tardy day. And unlike Ferrari in Formula 1, Porsche had to capitalise and at least win or get on the podium. And now with 4 rounds to go, there's Spa, Abu Dhabi, tracks like that coming up. He knows them as well, Porsche, and it's looking good for him. He's got a bit of momentum behind him going into the summer break. And let's see how he gets on in the second half of the season. See if he can win that championship, and who knows what the future holds for him.
Yeah, just how impressive was that victory today? I mean, he really he flew, didn't he? Especially in the second stint, managed to extend his gap, didn't he?
Yeah, it was very good, especially the tyre management in the second stint. We know that the Pirelli in F2 is quite difficult to get the hang of, and especially the software, they degrade quite quickly. So it was good to keep the pace up. He got through the traffic nicely when guys like Djokovic got stuck in the midfield a bit. Again, a bit like Verstappen in Formula 1, just composed, no mistakes, hardly any lockups, and just delivered a strong result.
Yeah, really impressive drive by him, and as you say, just at the time he needed it as well. Because if he wasn't to deliver this weekend, I think people would start to think that the championship was done. That man in the lead of the championship, Felipes Dragovic, difficult race for him in the feature race. Jenny, he seemed to struggle with tyre wear a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was really weird to see Drugovic, of all drivers, struggling with tyres. He pitted the earliest out of the front runners as well on lap 8, which I thought was, again, weird because we're so used to seeing him extending his stints as long as possible. Like, we've had the conversation before of, is he doing what he needs to do for the championship? And I think he is. It's hard to see how he can carry on when there's so many drivers that are putting in consistent podiums and consistent wins.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. That's something I was going to ask you. He's obviously taken the conservative approach in the last few rounds. He said pre-race, we got to be smart and look for the points, which obviously shows that he is thinking about the championship. Has that conservative approach even cost him a little bit this weekend?
I mean, for sure, this weekend, I think it's cost him. But I think if you look at the way this championship's unfolded, I think it's the right way to go about things. We've got kind of a weird landscape in F2 this year, where a lot of the names that we were expecting to be fighting for the championship aren't up there. They're kind of in that range of like 4th to 12th. A lot of those names, second-year drivers up there. Drugovic, obviously, in his third year, was expected to do, but maybe not quite be as strong as he was at the beginning of the year. I do think that this cost him this weekend just because part of it was the strategy. I mean, I think it was what the winning strategy ultimately with Pourchaire won with, but Drugovic just wasn't in that same group, and then he got jumped, for example, by Lawson coming through the field. So that's part of it. I think another thing, MP Motorsport just isn't quite as experienced at managing a title challenge. I guess we can make sort of an analogy here to Ferrari and F1, as Lucas alluded to. We've got a driver and a team that are clearly kind of hooked up together, but we don't necessarily have that kind of like long-term execution, so to speak. And I think, I mean, in the difference here is that MP is still getting the results, Drugovic is still getting the results, but it was a little bit concerning to see what we have today and just kind of to see almost a complacency from Drugovic. Obviously, I was in the paddock this weekend. I saw Felipe a few times. He doesn't really seem any less motivated. I've not obviously seen him in person before, but he is a lot more relaxed than some of the other drivers. And that's a good thing in terms of, like kind of this calm, almost sly driving style that you can sometimes see with him picking up points. But it can also be a thing where, he sort of has given up. He's not a name that's often mentioned for an F1 seat next year. He's more come up in I think discussions for IndyCar, in Formula E potentially, just kind of a move outside of F1. There's an outside chance maybe with Vettel retiring that changes, but that's not going to be the most motivating thing if he's not really like in prime contention for that kind of thing, or is touted as someone like Piastri obviously was brought up last year, someone who needs an F1 seat. He's not really put in that same category by a lot of analysts, and I think that makes it somewhat difficult as a driver to stay motivated. You take it race by race, but no driver is never going to be thinking about like anything beyond this year. And for Drugovic, that's what I sort of fear may be an issue. I don't know for sure. Should probably ask him, but.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wonder why that is. It's his third season in Formula 2. Obviously, Nick de Vries won the championship in his third season, but just winning the championship wasn't enough for him. Is it the same for Felipe Drugovic, that just winning the championship in his third season isn't enough for an F1 drive, and he needs to dominate the season to be considered for an F1 drive, bearing in mind it is his third season, and therefore with his approach, his conservative approach of just seeing the championship out, is that what's kind of costing him being in the frame for an F1 seat, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he does really need to kind of dominate. Not every driver in their third year needs to do it, but Drugovic doesn't come from a place where there's a ton of backing, so he doesn't have that advantage. Nick de Vries is a pretty good analogy here. I think in 2019, he won. It was fairly convincing, but it didn't get him anywhere. His shot had kind of bypassed him at that point. And I think we're seeing a sort of similar thing happening here.
Yeah, obviously lots to come, I'm sure, in the driver market with Sebastian Vettel sadly announcing his retirement. So let's wait and see if Felipe Drugovic is mentioned his name's in the hat. Moving on then, the brilliant LA Wilshaw spoke last week on the show about high tech and their poor pit stops. Another slow-ish stop this weekend. I know obviously positioning in the pit lane comes into it as well, but has that cost Marcus Armstrong a potential feature race victory this weekend, Jenny? He was ahead of Théo Pourchaire going into the stops, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think in the first stages of the race, he had the most convincing run. He had quite a big well, not a big lead, but he had a decent lead over Porsche. I think it's something that's been a story for the whole season. And I noticed today that it was better than it normally is. But that half a second, or however many it wasn't much, but it was enough to drop him back where Porsche and Iwasa were, and then eventually hold him. But I think when you look at the second phase of the race, Porsche did have it. Whether Armstrong could have kept that pace, we won't know. But I think it definitely cost him a top 2 position, which is something that's happened in so many races. And it's a shame because you wonder where Vips and Armstrong could be in the championship without these pit stops. But yeah, I think Vips had a good stop today. But it's so late in the season for these things to keep happening. It makes you ask questions.
Michael, is that something that was discussed in the paddock? And do you think that High-Tech, they're a fairly young team in terms of, Formula 2. Do you think that they just aren't ready to give a driver a championship yet? And obviously pit stops are a big part of that over the course of a season.
That might be part of it. I don't think it's necessarily the full story. I mean, every year there's been sort of a different factor there. I'm not sure that Mazepin had quite enough to get it done in 2020. In 2021, there were a lot of mechanical issues for Yuri Vips. Liam Lawson had a few as well. I think that was a case where maybe the drivers weren't ready, and certainly Piastri was not beatable. This year, I think again, it's there's the team side of it for sure. You can't discount that, but the drivers have also made their fair share of errors. Vips in particular has had some pretty costly ones earlier in the year. With Marcus, I think he hasn't quite had that advantage in the feature races. This year, he's definitely been one that's benefited from sprint races. He's got the win in Imola, he's got the win at the Red Bull Ring, and I think there was a podium at Monaco as well. And, today was his best shot at it, pretty unquestionably, I think. You can fault the team. In all honesty, I don't know that he would have gotten by Porsche. Another thing I'm just going to put up there, Marcus walked into the lounge at like 10:30 today. We were watching the F3 race, and he walks in and he goes to grab a coffee, and he just looks really kind of tired. I mean, most drivers you think are pretty like ready to go for the race. But Marcus he's always a very calm guy, but he did look definitely like he just kind of had a really long weekend. It's his birthday weekend. I know they weren't like celebrating or anything prematurely, but I did notice that. I was thinking, well, we'll let it factor in. And Vips was sitting there right next to me, and he looked completely like fine and ready to go. But no, I think High-Tech's just sort of struggling. They're in this kind of limbo between being a consistent top performer, as I think we've seen ART come to be. The Drugovich MP combination is there, and Logan and Liam at Carlin, I think, have sort of shown that same pace. High-Tech isn't there. They're not consistent enough. That's really what's lacking. Marcus Armstrong's had more consistency than Vips, I would say, but it's just not there. It sucks for the huge Armstrong entourage that was here this weekend. Almost 10, the family, mom, dad, his sister, several friends were there, and they were all there this weekend. And it is a shame for them that they're sort of this shot that they would have had to see what could very likely have been a victory sort of evaporate in front of their eyes. But I mean, you kind of just have to take it. It's the nature of the beast of F2.
Yeah, Marcus sounds like he needs the summer break, so I'm sure he'll go and sit on a beach somewhere and enjoy a few weeks. You do wonder how many, if it is his third season in Formula 2 as well, and you do wonder whether he's potentially looking elsewhere for next season and how many opportunities he'll get to win a feature race. So it is a shame to see that. Okay, moving on then. Double podium this weekend for Enzo Fittipaldi. Fourth in the driver's standings, the fourth driver to reach triple figures. Luke, who had that on their predictions at the beginning of the season?
I certainly didn't. And he's done really well, isn't he? Got 2 podiums this weekend, as you just said, and he hasn't been making mistakes or looking, anxious in the media. He's looked very composed and calm, and he's doing a good job. He's I'd say exceeded expectations. I certainly didn't think he'd be doing as well as he has, and I think Shrewsbury are a decent team, and he's doing a good job. Obviously, he's got his brother Pietro around the paddock, so I'm sure he's giving him the odd bit of advice here and there, and hopefully he does well the next few rounds as well. I mean, it'd be interesting to see him at Spa. Obviously, a very different track to Hungary, and hopefully he keeps up the good form.
Absolutely. Brilliant weekend. Probably his best weekend in Formula 2. And yeah, very, very impressive. There was a point where I thought towards the end of the feature race today that he might put a bit of pressure on Théo Closes, but yeah, really impressive. Let's talk about sprint race winner Jack Doohan, Michael. Really, yeah, strong result for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's something that he needed. He's been telling me, I think on Friday I talked with him, and he sort of explained his season as one of a missed opportunity. He's been certainly one of the fastest. You saw this right from the gate in Bahrain, he took pole, and then again in Barcelona with the second pole position. But just for various reasons, things have gone wrong. Just small mistakes. The little collision in Baku that took him out of points, potentially a podium in the feature race. Disqualification in Jeddah, the collision in Bahrain, I think he lost his front wing there. All those little things, they just kind of add up over a season. This month has kind of been his best, I would say, in terms of, consistently getting those podiums. The one thing, though, is they've all been sprint race podiums, except for Catalunya, which was, he got second in the feature race there. He had 2 sprint race wins, both great wins, both very solid drives in the third and Red Bull Ring. But in the feature races, he's just not been able to put it together. And I think that's what's kind of been haunting him. He is able to do it. I think there's no shortage of ability there. Virtuoso is a very strong team. But it's just kind of that little extra bit he's missing. And he did comment in a note to F1 Feeder Series, another media outlet, that he felt he's been lacking because his teammate Sato isn't on the same level. There is a definite difference in performance there, where we see it in the point standings, we see it from race to race, and not having that extra set of data, he said, to sort of rely on and get additional information from has cost him. That was basically the gist of what he said. And it's an interesting perspective, because even a driver like Drugovich, you don't necessarily see this as much. Clement Noblak's quite a bit further back generally, but I mean, he has had some strong drives as well. So we see this with these kind of de facto, almost one-car teams. Fittipaldi as well, you could say Bullock-Bashi is using this year to adapt. It does affect things sometimes, and I think it is a testament when you do have a driver that's able to kind of overcome that. It is a testament to their sort of individual ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting perspective, that is. And it gives you a bit of an insight to drivers. So yeah, really interesting. Prema, poor Prema, struggling a little bit. A few journalists picking up on it as well. Kanal Shah saying that it's Prema's first non-scoring weekend of 2022, and individually 5 non-scoring weekends for Dennis Hauger this season. That was Jehan Daruvala's second non-scoring weekend. We're talking about the reigning team and drivers champions. They've been a dominant team since they entered the sport back in 2016, or entered the series back in 2016, Luke. What's happening? Is there any kind of explanation to it as to why they're struggling so much?
Yeah, it's strange with Prema. I mean, we've seen them, of course, in 2020 win the championship with Mick Schumacher, and they've got good drivers this year, of course, with F3 champion Dennis Hauger and Rebel Junior Jehan Daruvala. I mean, I think Hauger has made a couple of mistakes. He made a mistake on Friday. He ran wide and he spun in practice. So he hasn't had a faultless season, and Daruvala is his third season now. So got one experienced driver and one lesser experienced. But it's strange because they're leading in F3, as they always do. They tend to dominate in Formula 3. So it's interesting to see the disparity between F3 and F2. But I'm not sure really what it is. It's hard to put your finger on one particular thing. It's hard to put your finger on one particular thing, but I mean, all they can do is recharge over the summer break. There's 4 rounds to go, and maybe get a few podiums and wins, and try and challenge for the championship next year. But maybe Hauger will stay with them for next year, or maybe he'll move on. I suppose we don't know yet. But we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, it is strange to see them, though, make these mistakes that you don't normally see.
Yeah, very uncharacteristic of Prema, as you say, and 2 very strong drivers. There was also a stewards stewards decision this weekend. Jehan Daruvala, Marcus Armstrong coming together in the sprint race. Marcus Armstrong tried to go around the outside of Daruvala in turn 1, made a bit of contact and got a 10-second penalty for it. Aaron Harper on our live debrief on Twitch straight after the race said he thought it was a little bit harsh. Michael, do you think that's a little bit harsh, especially bearing in mind, obviously, Daniel Ricciardo, Lance Stroll came together in the race today. Stroll was sent round, and Daniel Ricciardo only got a 5-second penalty for it. Do you think that was harsh on Deruvla?
I did find it a bit harsh, if I'm being honest. It's one of these, again, things, every time you look at a steward's decision, it's easy as a fan, even as someone that like works a little more closely as in the sport as we do, to judge it based on the consequences and not the actual action. I think that was one thing that made the Hauger Nissany incident back at Silverstone very difficult to judge. A lot of other things as well. You can tend to sort of exaggerate how much the penalty should be based on how kind of spectacular the incident is. That one was just weird though, because it not only did it not affect either one of them that much. Marcus went wide. It was sort of self-punishing for Deruvla in a way. I personally am not a steward. I don't know that it merited more than 5 seconds. I can say, again, watching from inside the VIP lounge, the Armstrong and Deruvla camps are sitting right next to each other. That was interesting. I was expecting it to be more tense than I think it was, which is a testament to those two. I know they're good friends off the track, but it's a strange one, really. And going back to, Prema's issues, I don't know. I think I agree with Luke. I can't really pin it down to anything. To me, it seems a morale issue, if anything. They just don't look, watching them, seeing them, they don't seem to have that kind of spark that you expect. You see this with other teams. The mechanics are obviously, I think they're doing the best they can. Everyone's doing the best they can, but it just seems to be demoralized. I'm going to guess that ever since, Hauger had the huge incident in Silverstone, and after that, Deruvla lost the win in Austria to that penalty. Ever since then, I think things have just kind of been, spiraling a little bit. Even in France, Deruvla lost a potential win there, and it's just, small mistakes, small differences in pace, just not kind of capitalizing on opportunities in that very Prema way that you expect them to do. F3, they are doing that. Well, this weekend, maybe there was a late collision in the sprint race that was between two of the drivers. It was a little bit unnecessary, but otherwise they do seem to be a team that, they always score with all their, they get as many cars into points as they can. And they're usually up there. So it is weird. It's just not characteristic. If you look at the standings, look at those results, you wouldn't think that's Prema that scores at that. If you scrub out the team name, it is pretty odd. I think the drivers are still a little bit raw, maybe just don't quite have that experience or that, confidence in their cars to get it up to the levels that we see Drugovich and Pourchaire and Sargent, and even Fittipaldi attaining. So, I'm sure it'll get better for them. It's Prema. We can expect them to bounce back, but I think they are a team where the summer break will be hugely beneficial for them to kind of hit a reset.
Yeah, completely agree. It just seems, almost crazy. It's Prema we're talking about. The reigning champions. They've been dominant for years. So, as you say, the summer break comes at the right time for them. Sticking with steward decisions, Jenny. Ollie Caldwell banned for the next race in Spa. He was already on 11 penalty points. 12 means that he gets a ban. His 1 point this weekend was for track limits. Obviously, he already got the 5-second penalty in race, but the penalty point is on top of that. Is that a bit harsh on him?
I think it's really harsh. I think when you look at all of his penalty points, the majority are track limits, which I think is such a shame, because you look at the headlines, and if you're not necessarily a F2 fan, you're a Formula One fan, and you see that it's an Alpine Junior, you see his name, it reflects so badly on him and his career. The points that he's got for the ban, they've not affected anything. They've not affected anyone else's race. He's not put anyone in danger. And I just think it's such a shame, because he's been doing so well recently. In the last few rounds, we've seen a change in performance from him. So I think missing Spa, it seems really unfair to me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And Ollie Caldwell obviously picked up his first points only a couple of rounds ago. And real shame for him. Michael, is that something that you agree with in terms of penalty points? Track limits, they pick up a penalty within the race, but should that be where it stops, that they do pick up a 5-second penalty? And could we potentially avoid those extra penalty points on top of the 5-second penalty in race?
one thing that's always baffled me with how they do this is they keep the 3 violations rule constant for the sprint race and the feature race. Those are 2 races of different lengths. The feature race it's got the extra pit stop. I want to say it's 60 minutes maximum time. The sprint race, I believe, is like 45. So you've got kind of that extra third distance. For that reason, it's strange that they don't like sort of allocate that, like the flag stuff proportionally. You'd think if it's 3, let's say you get a black and white flag on the third one, and then you get the penalties for your 4th violation in the sprint race. Well, I keep it the same for a race that's got extra distance. And that's where, again, you see, in this particular instance, it hurt Caldwell, but we saw this in Austria too. It was that 4th violation that got a lot of people those penalties and sort of made a mess of that result. It had to be done, but it's a weird way of enforcing it that I think is just, it's a simple change, in my opinion. And it's the kind of thing that logically just makes sense. Maybe I'm the crazy one, but that's what I think you could do to fix that particular issue of legislating it. I have to be honest, I think it makes sense to give some sort of penalty point for leaving the track limits, but to have it be somewhat equal to, let's say, speeding in the pit lane, number of penalty points, that's 2 penalty points, I think, or something like that. And then you've got 2 penalty points for leaving the track 5 times instead of 3. Well, that's 2 mistakes that in all likelihood are not going to be that severe. The 1 chance out of 50 where it's a really dangerous leaving of track limits, I think you can award a harsher penalty to. But pit lane safety is hugely important. You can't let that go. You can't let that fly. Certain collisions you can't kind of let fly. And so again, I think that penalty point system could be graded better. It's the right idea. I think it's the right approach to, after a certain amount of violations, you've got to kind of lay the law down. But is it being done as well as it can be? I don't think so. And I think Ollie's been the one shafted in this case. And I do feel bad for him. He's just gaining some confidence in the car now this month, getting those points in Austria. Ever since then, he's starting to, gel, I think, with Formula 2 a lot better. And it's disappointing for him. And I do feel bad for him that he's having that sort of that momentum kind of cut short right now. He took it on the chin. I saw him after the race. He looked a little bit disappointed, but as he was leaving, he was chatting with, I think, his dad and someone else in the paddock from Alpine, and looked to be in good spirits. So I'm hoping he's not too down about it. I'm sure knew it was coming, but it is one of these unfortunate things that, you have to deal with, get it over with, serve your time, and then come back a better driver. And I trust that he can do that.
Absolutely, he'll learn from it. Luke David Beckman potentially going to Campos. He's been the jumping driver, isn't he? Jumping about VAR. We're expecting Jake Hughes to return, so he'll be free. Will he be going over to Campos?
Yeah, potentially. He's been pretty dependable this year, isn't he? So it'll be a good safe pair of hands for them for Spa.
He's almost had a full season, hasn't he? Not signed up to a team full time, but almost had a full season. Only missed a few races. Okay, competition time now. Carlin have very kindly given us some driver cards signed by their driver, Liam Lawson. And rather than keeping them to ourselves, we thought we'd decide to give them to you guys, our brilliant fans. So to be in with a chance of winning a signed driver card, all you have to do is answer the following question. Carlin sits second in the team standings going into the summer break, but how many points are they on? I'll repeat because I'm feeling nice. Carlin sits second in the team standings going into the summer break, but how many points are they on? To be in with a chance of winning the prize, head over to either our Twitter at F2Inside or our Instagram at Inside Formula 2 and correctly answer the question in the comments. To win, you'll need to be following us on the social media channel that you're commenting on and have liked the post and tagged a friend along with your answer. And it's really important to make sure you do that. Otherwise, you might not win the prize. And we really want to be giving the prize away. So, please make sure you've done all of those things. And a bonus point for anyone who follows us on Twitter, Instagram, and our YouTube, and is subscribed to our YouTube channel as well. A really cool prize, especially if you're a Liam Lawson fan. So wishing you all the very best of luck. Okay, that's all we have time for today. My thanks to Luke, to Jenny, and to Michael for joining us on today's show. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a like, subscribe for more Formula 2 content. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, hashtag the F2 show to get involved in the conversation. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.